third time starting this recording. First was thwarted by me not recording everything. Second, because I don't know when to stop talking. So activity 1.3.4 is very heavily modified from the PLTW activity. And it's actually pretty heavily modified from what I did last year when I did this particular activity. And that's kind of how IED has been running this year. A lot of changes from activity to activity to try to make things run better and run smoother. Just as a heads up, as we work through the designs in this particular activity, I anticipate that there's going to be some things that aren't working quite right, which is going to surprise nobody. So I want to make sure that I'm really clear about what this activity is supposed to cover, okay? So in this activity, we're going to do 2 designs, and we are covering patterns. So that's the main thing about the first design is rectangular and circular patterns. Okay, that's what we're going to be looking at in that first activity. Second activity just covers a bunch of stuff, lofts, tapered extrusions, offset planes, and shells. So there's other stuff like embedded in here, how to do polygons, how to use construction circles. There's a lot of material and skills that are embedded in this lesson. If things that aren't the focus of the lesson go wrong. So you'll see in a moment my first attempt at design 1 that some weird stuff happened. I don't know what happened, and I could go back and I could take all this time and try to figure out like exactly what happened, but that wasn't the point of the activity. That wasn't the skill that I was trying to teach. And so if stuff goes kind of amiss when you're making these things, I want you to keep in mind the point of the activity and ask yourself, okay, am I learning how to do the skills that I'm supposed to be learning how to do, even if like the symmetry of something is off or the stars are overlapping and they're not supposed to overlap or something like that. We're not going to worry about that too much. Okay, I want to be really clear about that at the outset. So the deliverables for this, for activity 1, I actually stole an idea from one of our luggage tags, and I just thought this would be a great way to practice with patterns. And that particular group got to see a pattern at work. I'm not sure they remember how to do it, but the rest of the groups really didn't get to see how the pattern works. So we're going to make a colonial flag, and the goal for that is to really look at rectangular patterns and circular patterns. Okay, we're also going to look at using a construction circle, how to use the trim feature. We're going to use some constraints and so forth. So it's going to give us a chance to practice some of our other skills as well. For activity 2, there are 3 screenshots. One, we're going to be making a screw holder, just so you know what we're making. Is going to be an isometric of your screw holder, basically showing that you've got the general idea. And some of the things that we're doing, like lofts and tapered extrusions and shelling, like you don't have to produce a lot of dimensions on that to be able to show that you did the activity correctly. One is going to be a section view showing the holes, and that's when you create a plane and you kind of drag the plane through it. And I know I've done that with some groups. I don't know that we've talked about it as a whole class, so we will in this particular activity. And then one from the bottom showing the shelling from the outside, so that you can see that you can put the screws in screw holder and they're not going to just all fall through. Each screenshot is going to be worth 5 points for a total of 20 points in the activity. To kind of keep that in mind. And it is possible that some of your screenshots are going to be off with some of the things. And I'll try to be really clear in class about like what kinds of things do I have to see to be able to give you the 5 points, and what sorts of things, if they go wrong, aren't going to be a huge deal. So for the activity 1, I went and looked this up because I think it's important to try to get things as right as possible and to not eyeball it. So apparently there are all sorts of online flag calculators for this. You can, I was surprised that's not something I normally look up. So what we have there are the actual standard proportions for the American flag. And so you have the hoist fly of both the flag and the Union. And then we don't really need, we're going to be doing a colonial flag with the 13 stars. So we don't really need to know about the E, F, G, and H, which are like the spacings of the stars on the flag. I'm also not going to worry about the diameter of a star. I did write that one down, but I think at that point we're going to practice with like a mirror tool and the circular pattern, and we're just not going to worry about the dimensions on that. The stripe width, I had something very strange happen when I did the stripe width. And so I'm going to record a video demonstrating this particular sketch, and we'll see if it goes better. But so the scenario here, suppose you wanted to design a charm that could be attached to a backpack via holes at each of the 4 corners. In order to get the dimensions right, we need to know the proportions. And so if I close out my head there for a second, we will set our hoist A to 2 inches, and so that's gonna give us like a 1:2 ratio, which means you have to double all these remaining numbers to get the right dimensions on your flag. So you'd make this 2, and then to get the length of the flag B, you do 1.9 times 2, which would be 3.8 inches, and then pretty much all of these going down, you would double them. And here's my first attempt. So I ended up with 14 stripes and 1 line that clearly went off course. And to be honest, I don't exactly know how that happened, because I did what's called a reference dimension, which should have worked. But I believe, like, if we count down the stripes here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then no clue how that line got off of the horizontal. In fact, it almost doesn't even look like it doesn't, it looks like it could even be more than 1 line. No idea what happened. And it didn't happen in any other lines, only that one. And I was like, well, that is not what I'm practicing. So we're just not going to sweat it. So stuff like that, just we're not gonna stress over it. So hopefully my video will be smoother, and the in-class demo will be even better, because it'll be the 3rd time I've done it, and I can work out my own issues with this. But we had some issues with that. I actually did like a reference dimension show, so I have no idea how I ended up with 4, just or 14 stripes. And then you'll see the stars over here in the circular pattern, and you should recognize that is a construction circle going on over there. So we're using a circle for the purposes of creating the pattern, but the circle itself is not actually part of the sketch. So you are going to produce something like this for me. Again, if something strange happens, we are not gonna sweat it. I'll let you know. You can raise your hand and say, Miss Sailors, is this a serious enough problem that you're gonna deduct something? And I'll let you know. I'll let you know if it's something that needs to be deducted. The second activity is a screw holder. And mine, this is actually my directions from last year, which if I recall worked really well. So, we're keeping what's good. So this lesson included a lot of measurements and angle estimates. If you go into the PLTW curriculum, I remember really, really not liking the way that this was written. They got really specific about some things that had to be done a certain way, and then we're very generic about, estimate this and that. And I'm kind of like, if you are going to be particular, you need to be particular. If you're not going to be particular, don't stress the kids out over it. So instead of having you try to follow through the directions on your own, we're just going to work through the steps. And basically the steps will look like this. You're going to draw a pentagon, extrude it with a tapered extrusion of -45 degrees. Do note that negative, that is a text message coming in. And so we're going to learn the tapered extrusion. Extrude it again with a tapered angle of about 2 degrees. And what we're doing there is we're creating this pedestal here with that. It's like extruded, but it's obviously going in at an angle. And I think you can see you can't really see the ridge on that view. Then we're going to create an offset plane. And centered at the pentagon, and this is my stuff from last year. Mine clearly wasn't like, so my circle is not centered over the pentagon the right way, and you can tell because it like looks off center. And this is the honest truth. I didn't want to go back and fix it afterwards, and that isn't the particular point of this part. So again, it's about keeping in mind, like, what are we trying to learn here, and getting the circle centered over the pentagon. I'm not sure why it wasn't centered over the pentagon. Like, I feel like it should have been, but it wasn't, and that wasn't what we were trying to do. We're trying to practice tapered extrusions and lofts and shelling and some other skills with that. So not going to stress over that. We're going to create a loft between the pentagon and the circle, and the loft is this part right here that looks like it starts as a pentagon, but as you tilt up, it becomes a circle, and that's pretty much what a loft is. So we'll go over that in the video where I demo it and in class. Then extrude the circle upwards at an angle of -2 degrees. So pretty much like when we're extruding at that angle, we're making it narrower as we're going up. Fillet the top edge. And again, notice that there's no measurements on there. It doesn't tell you how far you have to extrude it or how much you have to fillet it. Just put a fillet on there. And don't distort it so that you can't do the rest of it. Extrude a hole in the center that goes almost all the way through. So that's this hole right here. You're going to cut that hole in there. Use a circular pattern to create 5 more holes that only go part way down. And that would be these holes here. And then shell the part. And you can see the shell in the bottom, meaning you're going to hollow it out. And that would obviously save money in terms of the materials. So that's an overview of the 2 activities. I'm going to try to create 2 videos where I demonstrate these so that you can watch them from home if you fall behind in class and so forth. But I think I'm going to go for 2 videos. We'll see how it goes. And then we'll take it from there. So that's the overview of activity 1.3.4.